Chapter 2 Palancar Valley. The sun rose the next morning with a glorious conflagration of pink and yellow. The air was fresh, sweet, and very cold. Ice edged the streams, and small pools were completely frozen over. After a breakfast of porridge, Eragon returned to the glen and examined the charred area. The morning light revealed no new details, so he started for home. The rough game trail was faintly worn and, in places, non-existent. Because it had been forged by animals, it often backtracked and took long detours. Yet for all its flaws, it was still the fastest way out of the mountains. The spine was one of the only places that King Galbatorix could not call his own. Stories were still told about how half his army disappeared after marching into its ancient forest. A cloud of misfortune and bad luck seemed to hang over it. Though the trees grew tall and the sky shone brightly, few people could stay in the spine for long without suffering an accident. Eragon was one of those few, not through any particular gift, it seemed to him, but because of persistent vigilance and sharp reflexes. He had hiked in the mountains for years, yet he was still wary of them. Every time he thought they had surrendered their secrets, something happened to upset his understanding of them. Like the stone's appearance. He kept up a brisk pace, and the league steadily disappeared. In late evening he arrived at the edge of a precipitous ravine. The Enora River rushed by far below, heading to Palancar Valley. Gorged with hundreds of tiny streams, the river was a brute force, battling against the rocks and boulders that barred its way. A low rumble filled the air. He camped in a thicket near the ravine and watched the moon rise before going to bed. It grew colder over the next day and a half. Eragon traveled quickly and saw little of the wary wildlife. A bit past noon, he heard the Agolda Falls blanketing everything with the dull sound of a thousand splashes. The trail led him onto a moist slate of outcropping, which the river sped past, flinging itself into empty air and down mossy cliffs. Before him lay Palancar Valley, exposed like an unrolled map. The base of the Agolda Falls, more than half a mile below, was the northernmost point of the valley. A little ways from the falls was Carver Hall, a cluster of brown buildings. White smoke rose from the chimneys, defiant of the wilderness around it. At this height, farms were small square patches, no bigger than the end of his finger. The land around them was tan or sandy, where dead grass swayed in the wind. The Enora River wound from the falls toward Palancar's southern end, reflecting great strips of sunlight. Far in the distance, it flowed past the village of Theransford and the lonely mountain Utgard. Beyond that, he knew only that it turned north and ran to the sea. After a pause, Eragon left the outcropping and started down the trail, grimacing at the descent. When he arrived at the bottom, soft dusk was creeping over everything, blurring colors and shapes into gray masses. Carver Hall's light shimmered nearby in the twilight. The houses Oh, the houses cast long shadows. Aside from Thornsford, Carver Hall was the only village in Palancar Valley. The settlement was secluded and surrounded by harsh, beautiful land. Few traveled here except merchants and trappers. The village was composed of stout log buildings with low roofs, some thatched, others shingled. Smoke billowed from the chimneys, giving the air a woody smell. The buildings had wide porches where people gathered to talk and conduct business. Occasionally, a window brightened as a candle or lamp was lit. Eragon heard men talking loudly in the evening air, while wives scurried to fetch their husbands, scolding them for being late. Eragon wove his way between the houses to the butcher's shop, a broad, thick-beamed building. Overhead the chimney belched black smoke. He pushed the door open. The spacious room was warm and well lit by a fire snapping in a stone fireplace. A bare counter stretched across the far side of the room. The floor was strewn with loose straw. Everything was scrupulously clean, as if the owner spent his leisure time digging in obscure crannies for minuscule pieces of filth. Behind the counter stood the butcher, Sloane. A small man, he wore a cotton shirt and a long, blood-stained smock. An impressive array of knives swung from his belt. He had a sallow, pockmarked face. Not sure why I did it. And his black eyes were suspicious. He polished the counter with a ragged cloth. Sloane's mouth twisted as Eragon entered. "Well, the mighty hunter joins the rest of us mortals. How many did you bag this time?" "None," was Eragon's curt reply. He had never liked Sloane. The butcher always treated him with disdain, as if he were something unclean. A widower, Sloane seemed to care for only one person, his daughter, Katrina, on whom he doted. "I'm amazed," said Sloane with affected astonishment. He turned his back on Eragon to scrape something off the wall. "And what's your reason for coming here?" "And that's your reason for coming here?" "Yes," Eragon admitted uncomfortably. "If that's the case, let's see your money." Sloane tapped his fingers when Eragon shifted his feet and remained silent. "Come on. Either you have it or you don't. Which is it?" "I don't really have any money, but I do—" "What? No money?" The butcher cut him off sharply. "And you expect to buy meat? Are other merchants giving away their wares? Should I just hand you the goods without charge? Besides," he said abruptly, "it's late. Come back tomorrow with money. I'm closed for the day." Eragon glared at him. "I can't wait until tomorrow, Sloane. It'll be worth your while, though. I've found something to pay you with." He pulled out the stone with a flourish and set it gently on the scarred counter, where it gleamed with light from the dancing flames. "Stole it, more likely," muttered Sloane, leaning forward with an interested expression. Ignoring the comment, Eragon asked, "Will this be enough?" Sloane picked up the stone and gauged its weight speculatively. He ran his hands over its smoothness and inspected the white veins. With a calculating look, he set it down. "It's pretty, but how much is it worth?" "I don't know," admitted Eragon. "But no one would have gone to the trouble of shaping it unless it had some value." "Obviously," said Sloane with exaggerated patience. "But how much value? Since you don't know, I suggest that you find a trader who does, or take my offer of 3 crowns. "That's a miser's bargain. It must be worth at least 10 times that," protested Eragon. 3 crowns would not even buy enough meat to last a week." Sloane shrugged. "If you don't like my offer, wait until the traders arrive. Either way, I'm tired of this conversation." The traders were a nomadic group of merchants and entertainers who visited Carver Hall every spring and winter. They brought whatever excess the villagers and local farmers had managed to grow or make, and sold what they needed to live through another year: seeds, animals, fabrics, and supplies like salt and sugar. But Eragon did not want to wait until they arrived. It could be a while, and his family needed the meat now. "Fine, I accept," he snapped. "Good, I'll get you the meat. Not that it matters, but where did you find this?" "2 nights ago in this mine." "Get out!" demanded Sloane, pushing the stone away. He stomped furiously to the end of the counter and started scrubbing old blood stains off a knife. "Why?" asked Eragon. He drew the stone closer, as if to protect it from Sloane's wrath. "I don't deal with anything you bring back from those damned mountains! Take your sorcerer's stone elsewhere." Sloane's hand suddenly slipped and he cut a finger on the knife, but he seemed not to notice. He continued his scrub, stained the knife with fresh blood. How unsanitary. "You refuse to sell to me." "Yes, unless you pay with coins," Sloane growled and hefted the knife, sidling away. "Go before I make you." The door behind them slammed open. Eragon whirled around, ready for more trouble. In stomped Horst, a hulking man. Sloane's daughter, Katrina, a tall girl of 16, trailed behind him with a determined expression. Eragon was surprised to see her. She usually absented herself from any arguments involving her father. Sloane glanced at them warily, then started to accuse Eragon. "He won't—" "Quiet," announced Horst in a rumbling voice, cracking his knuckles at the same time. It was Carver Hall Smith, as his thick neck and scarred leather apron attested. His powerful arms were bare to the elbow. A great expanse of hairy, muscular chest was visible through the top of his shirt. A black beard, carelessly trimmed, roiled and knotted like his jaw muscles. "Sloane, what have you done now?" "Nothing." He gave Eragon a murderous gaze, then spat. "This boy came in here and started badgering me. I asked him to leave, but he won't budge. I even threatened him, and he still ignored me." Sloane seemed to shrink as he looked at Horst.